Um, one time, I have to tell you this about your uncle. Ken almost never said anything that would upset me. Um, he basically let me do whatever I wanted to do because he knew that if he said don't do it, it was like a red flag. There it was. But this one time, I was painting our house at the lodge. And you know how when you paint it, the color is different. It might be the same color, but it's different because it's not aged.
Right.
So I'm out there and I'm painting the building that was all one story, and I'm up on like a bench and I'm painting. And I had one of our tenants there had really become a good friend. And I was up on the bench painting. And he comes home, and now it's really hot, and I'm painting. And I've done one whole side of the house, and I'm at the front door, and I'm painting over that. I still have the whole back to do. I'm painting over that. And I'm up on this table, like a picnic table, painting, because I could go. And so Ken comes home. My neighbor, who is a real Irish woman, was standing out. Well, she was renting for us, and she was standing out talking to me. And Ken came up and said, "That doesn't really match." And she took one look at me, and she got to that front door, and she went in so fast that you could hardly see her move. And so, I just vented, out painting all the time. It's new paint, and he's telling me it doesn't match. So it took me a little while to get down from the table. And I said to him, "You better get out of my way and don't talk to me for a long time. I'm not good enough at holding my temper to be nice to you."
And
so he got out of my way.
And you were married how many years?
Well, let's see. We moved there in 1959, about 20 years.
No, I mean, how long were you married? When did you?
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
No,
you were married 20 years then. So
yeah.
How long were you married before he died?
Oh, before he died.
Yeah, it was over 50, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. It was like 62 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and that was the worst fight you ever had in 62 years?
Well, not exactly.
Okay, let's hear
I knew there was a better story
Let's hear
under that
about
one.
the worst one.
Well, I don't remember exactly what he said to me, but I was doing something, that was hard and difficult and that. And whatever I was doing, I had a knife in my hand. And, it was hard work, and I was tired, and I just wasn't really my calm, loving self. And he said something, I threw the knife at him. Now, I didn't have a good aim.
Thank goodness.
I threw the knife at him. And I cut through the wall because it was a bedroom for the rest of the house. So I said to Ken, Ken, we could cut through this wall and I would close it off and we'd have another small apartment, because you could rent small apartments to retirees very easily. And so he started, and it was concrete. Oh, it was so hard. And he said to me, "Never, ever ask me to take a wall out again or to cut a door into it." And so I didn't. And in our own house where we were living, our kitchen had like a bar, and you sat on stools behind it. And It was a big room. And then it had a wall off. It was walled off completely, paneled, And so one day I got this bright idea about taking the wall down. And so I said something to Ken about the wall, and he said, "I am not taking down another wall in my whole life." And so it was so easy. I called a man that I knew real well who was a carpenter. And I said, we got this wall that Ken won't take down. And it was just like boards on each side of the wall, you know. And so he took it down and it was so easy, you know. And I never really told Ken how easy it was, but
So I know you were telling me earlier that when you came down, Ken wanted you to be here for a year by yourself while he stayed up in St. Louis working at Clean Coverall. But you got him to come down early. Tell us about that.
oh, all right. I really decided I didn't want to be down here a year by myself. I had his mother and
And 4
Three of
kids.
the
3 of
children.
the 4 kids.
Ken was going to college, and so he stayed up there with his father. And I, you know, after a while, I began thinking, you know, this is a big job here. I never had worked with a well or a pump or anything, you know, and I hadn't worked with a septic field. But this is what I did. Every time I called somebody to work, I followed them. And I soon learned what I could do without calling them. And anyway, by Easter, what happened is I started applying for jobs for him.
And where did you end up getting him the job at?
Well, the first one I got him a job at was Clearwater.
Which is 40 miles away, right?
Yeah, but I used to say, oh, you go over that beautiful bridge. And one day he said, don't talk to me about the bridge anymore. And so I didn't. But then I did get him a different job. And I interviewed for it. It was called Sarasota Dairy or something like that. It was a milk company. So I sent a letter and I put all my husband's knowledge about, you know,
Route sales and things like that.
yeah, and being like a supervisor and so on. And I sent it to the dairy. And so one day the man who owned the dairy called me and he said, would you come in for an interview? And I said, it's my husband. He says, I know, but I want to interview you. And I said, okay. So I went in. So I talked to him for a little while, and he said, we'd really like your husband to come work for us. And I thought, that's great. He's got a job. So I called Ken and I said, you have a job at the dairy.
Did you tell him to get down here now?
And well, you know, what the man who owned it said, anytime he gets here, he has a job. And so I thought, this is great. So I called him, I said, you've got a job, you know. And he said, what do you mean? And, the first job that is the way that one happened. But the first job he got was I saw a truck that said Coverall service on it. And it didn't seem to make any difference to me that it was in Clearwater.
It's closer
So-
than 1,000 miles.
So I called this company and I told them all about my husband and how he was a supervisor in St. Louis of Clean Coverall. And so they called him and offered him a job. And he came down and took that job. But he quit because the man who was either the boss or the owner or something was a man who talked really mean to his employees. And my husband went in like as a supervisor, and he wanted my husband to sort of cuss them out when they didn't. And he said, I'm not like that. I'm not that person. I quit. So he came on and he told me he quit. So I said, oh, well, you know, the man at the dairy is a wonderful man. He is mayor of Sarasota. And he said to me when I went down to be interviewed for you, that anytime you wanted a job, you should just come. You know, he'd find a job for you. And so he did. But when he got there, of course, there wasn't a job. But he said to Ken, go home for a week and I will make the job for you. So he went in as a supervisor. And so they were wonderful people to work for until they sold the dairy. And then it was another dairy that took over. And so he quit.
Are you too tired?
You need to pause it for a while. She needs to take some drinks, hydrate a little bit.